Howdy, peeps. Your friendly neighborhood Monomachos here speaking to you on July 13th, Saturday. Time for our Saturday evening post. Enjoying a little bourbon. American honey. Just tried it for the first time. Quite good. Anyway, excuse me. It's very necessary because the temperature has dropped here to about 6 degrees. And so, for those of you who are listening and you're living in northern climes or freezing climes, don't forget to leave your water running in your bathroom or a sink or something like that. Just a little tap. Anyway, um, so I had a lot of things I wanted to get on off my chest because of all the things that are going on. And the whole reason for having a Saturday evening post was to kind of go over the week's events, of which, as I said 3 weeks ago when I started this, that it's just it's snowballing, it's accelerating. Uh, so I'm going to try and honor that. But firstly, I want to. I I think there's one thing that happened that is just more sad and momentous at the same time, and that's the death of Gonzalo Lira Jr. Gonzalo Lira, formerly known as Coach Red Pill, had a significant presence on the internet under his moniker Coach Red Pill. And I don't know that much about his life, but he moved to the Ukraine, married a beautiful woman, as usual. They're all beautiful, has two children. Um, I don't know his marital status. I think the marriage broke up, but regardless, he got his family out of the Ukraine before the SMO. For some reason, he stayed. I'm sure there's probably a familiar reason he stayed, maybe legal reason, so that when this thing is over, his family can come back. Anyway, Gran Cojones, the guy was just, I mean, he must have had balls of steel because he stayed in the Ukraine and he switched over from being Coach Red Pill to just being a journalist talking about what's going on the ground. Originally, I think he lived in Kiev, but he did most of his reporting from Kharkov. He moved there and he had a little apartment there, and you could watch him, and every day he had something. Um, the guy was courageous. I mean, he, from the very start, when we were told that Ukrainian grandmothers were getting ready to march on Moscow and take Putin in chains. He said, "Folks, you're not hearing the story. You're not hearing the right story. The Russians are winning, and they're winning handily." Uh, he was right, but unfortunately, he he just felt like he could speak freely in the Ukraine, which under the Zelensky regime Ukraine is not even a democracy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Zelensky has outlawed political parties. He's outlawed the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He's thrown his political opponents in jail. On and on and on down the line. And the SBU, which is their secret police, has murdered several dissident journalists and or dissidents in general. So, say what you will, he stayed there and he gave a balls to the wall, opposite, truthful, I believe, reportage of what was going on in the Ukraine. Then he also did something which I really miss, and that was his roundtable. He had several roundtables in which he would interview, by Zoom, of course, several people, including Alex Mercouris, Alexander Christoforou, Eve Smith of Naked Capitalist, Mark Sloboda, uh, Garland Nixon, on and on down the line. Didn't always agree, but the roundtables usually there were four talking heads, and those would last for about 2 hours. Were quite informative, and boy did I miss them. Anyway, he was arrested finally, and he was put in prison. He was tortured, And somehow around August he escaped or he was let go. From what I understand, he he was very well to do and he had access to money and I guess he bribed some people. Anyway, he got on his motorcycle and he headed for the Hungarian border. And for some reason, don't ask me why, he did something which, in retrospect, I think I wish he hadn't have done. And that was he did a video as he was getting ready to cross the border, talking about where he is or whereabouts he is and how far he is from the border. And he said, if I'm caught, I'll probably go back to manual labor and I will die. Well, he did. He died. Um, I could go on and on talking about him, uh, but I I will say this: Gonzalo, he's of Chilean descent and he was a Chilean citizen, but I believe he was born in the United States. He had dual citizenship. He was an American citizen. Now, given the fact that the federal government pretty much controls everything in the Ukraine, I mean, we're even paying for the salaries of dog catchers and the pensions of teachers. All it would have taken was Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, to pick up the phone to Zelensky and say, release the guy. He's an American. He's not doing you any good anyway. I mean, he's spoken just ill of your regime. And even though we agree with you, Zelensky, and we're in this together, he's still an American citizen. He should be released. Well, we never did that. And so I'm sad to report that yesterday Gonzalo's father, Gonzalo Lira Sr., reported that his son had died. Now, whether he was in prison when he died or not, I'm not exactly sure. He did have some health issues. Gonzalo smoked like a chimney, so there may have been some respiratory issues involved, including emphysema or something along those lines, or maybe just pneumonia, and he just didn't have access to medication. Anyway, his prophecy of back in August has been borne out. He was killed, and Ionia su imnime, Gonzalo. I know you aren't Orthodox, but you're a brave man, and I trust that the Lord will credit you for all the good that you did. Okay, you're a better man than I, Gunga Din. I hate to be flippant at this point, but you know, the fallout from Bishop Athenagoras of Nazianzen's appearance before the Hindu temple in New Jersey continues to redound, and not to his favor. And it's just it's sad. I've always believed, or I've come to believe for several years now, that many Orthodox hierarchs feel that they have to always be in the limelight somehow. It's, this is especially true of Greek hierarchs. Sad to say that as long as they're shaking the hands of some senator or some undersecretary of state or getting their photo taken with some actor, then that means that they are, that they have some currency. And but this time, I think it's a little bit more than that. I watched his speech, and he at the temple, at this Hindu temple, and he did this gesture, and you know, it just it came to me that what he feels, what he's doing, is that he is recognizing that he is being recognized as a hierarch from the ecumenical throne, and that it's, it's it's almost this false modesty, but it's really an arrogance. That's nothing I I can get out of that. Anyway, I hope to not be talking about this in the future, but who knows? It it was sad, and it is just another indication of the worldliness that exists in certain dioceses or certain eparchies. In this case, the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Hopefully, this will not be the case in the future, but who knows? Um, let's see what else. Let's see, we're talking about Gaza. This is just an atrocity on every level. South Africa actually took Israel to court at the International Criminal Court, I believe in The Hague, and the South African solicitor gave us a 30-minute speech on the crimes that the Israelis are committing. And, I couldn't disagree with them. I will say this, though. South Africa's own hands are not exactly clean when it comes to genocide. Uh, the people of South Africa have been committing a low-level genocide against the Boers, the whites, for 20 years now, if not longer, and horrible genocide. And make no mistake, the Boers are indigenous there. They've been there for 13 generations. Okay, so I think South Africa needs to clean up their act before they throw more stones at Israel. Having having said that, what's going on in Israel is just horrific. I want to talk a little bit about just war theory. I'm going to write more about it, but in comparison to the Russians, the Israelis are violating all the precepts of just war. The Russians are trying very hard to uphold the the uh, the qualifications for what constitutes just war, including proportionality, including just cause. The Israelis went berserk. Now I understand what happened on October 7th was a shock, and it was not supposedly 1,200 Israelis were massacred, and a few were taken into as hostage. And I understand it's kind of like a Pearl Harbor type event, but the the overreaction by the Israelis is out of all proportion. We're talking about 22,000 innocent Palestinians now have been murdered, and talk about women and children too. Okay, so I will write more about just war theory next week, I hope. Let's see what else. Uh, let's see. Okay, predictive programming. This is something that's huge. Um, we are in the midst, I believe, of predictive programming, and basically what predictive programming is, to my in my estimation, my definition is that the willful implanting of a meme into the general consciousness so that it eventually works out as a physical effect. The example I can think of is the Dune Chronicles. I don't know if any of you have ever read Dune by Frank Herbert, but there was this group, the secret society of these priestesses called the Bene Gesserit, and their job was to go around and mate off or give off one of their priestesses to a certain nobleman so that they could conceive and have a child, and then and then those children would continue to have children, and so on and so forth, until finally a it would result in something called the Kwisatz Haderach, or a messianic figure. In the Dune series, the that figure is Paul Atreides, the illegitimate son of Duke Leto Atreides, who took over the planet Arrakis, or Dune. Anyway, the other thing that they did is that they would go around and plant these memes or these prophecies in the various planets of the galactic empire, and just plant them there and see which ones took off and bore fruit. And the people would eventually, come to just accept that, oh yeah, there's going to be this Messiah someday on this planet, or there's going to be a war on that planet at this particular time, when a certain duke takes over. Anyway, these were planted. These were not organic, but after several generations, they somewhat became organic, or at least they became current among the people. We have things like this in among the Greek people, for instance. There's theolegumena, or there was one that was very popular in the 19th century that said that if a Greek king named Constantine married a princess named Sophia, then the Greek people would be able to retake Constantinople and reconstitute the Byzantine Empire. This was very popular among the Greek people. And of course, in I guess it was in 1910 or earlier, Crown Prince Constantine of Greece married Princess Sophia of Prussia, and they later had a son named, well, they had several sons, George, Alexander, Paul. But anyway, the people of Greece just went ballistic with happiness because this was the prophecy being fulfilled before their eyes. There was a Greek prince and a prince named Constantine and a princess named Sophia. They got married. They became king and queen of the Greek people, and it's off to the races. Anyway, so we are in the midst of predictive programming here, and the one I want to speak about, and I will write more about it, is this upcoming movie, April 26th, I believe, called The Civil War, or Civil War. And this is I think they're preparing us for a civil war to either happen, or if it does happen, that those of us who participate in the Civil War, and I'm not preaching Civil War, predicting ain't preaching, folks. Okay, trust me. Okay, we're not doing that. The actors who are going to be in this actual Civil War, if it comes to that, will be able to look back at this movie and take their cues from it. That is what predictive programming is. That's what I believe we're being subjected to. Now, you're saying, George, that's kind of way out there. This has happened before. This happened over 120 years ago. There was a movie called Birth of a Nation. It was the first epic in cinematic history. It was by D.W. Griffith. And it was based on an earlier book. The movie came out in 1950, and in 1905 there was a book by Thomas Dixon Jr. named The Klansman. And the Klansmen in the movie were about the Reconstruction period and about the Ku Klux Klan and how they fought against the radical Republicans and saved, Southern society, so to speak. Interestingly enough, the Klan was originated in 1866 and it lasted until 1871. Finally, it was put down by President Ulysses S. Grant. The Klan did accomplish what it set out to do, though. And that was to eventually set in motion the removal of federal troops from the South, which finally happened in 1876. Regardless, the Klan became extinct. There was no more Klan, okay? Not for about 30 years. And actually 40 years. But then D.W. Griffith made a movie based on that book. The movie was Birth of a Nation, was shown in the White House, the first ever movie to be shown in the White House. And the president was President Woodrow Wilson, a controversial figure, a man who had tremendous Southern sympathies. And he set racial relations back a generation or two. Believe it or not, racial relations in the United States were progressing fairly well, but not Woodrow Wilson. When he was president of Princeton University, for instance, there was this young black fellow who applied, and And he wrote him a letter saying, thanks, but no thanks. You go to one of your own, go to Morehouse or Meharry or something like that. And he did these things also the during his administration in the civil service and in the military and in the Navy. He did everything he could to make life miserable for black civil servants and soldiers and sailors. He was not a good man. And then he did other things which are horrible as well. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Thomas Wilson, that was his real name, Thomas Woodrow Wilson, um, blessed this movie. And before you know it, it became very popular. And then it planted in the heads of of many people, not just in the South, but in the Midwest and the Northwest and everywhere else, that maybe this Klan was not such a bad idea after all. And so what happened is they recreated the Ku Klux Klan in his second iteration, and it lasted until about the 1950s. We can go on and on about that. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, except to say this: that J. Edgar Hoover did eradicate it finally. And there's other things about J. Edgar Hoover that he didn't go after the mafia, but he did go after the Klan. Okay. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that predictive programming is a real thing, and it can, not will, but it can result in fruit down the road. And just as the birth of a nation unwittingly became the template for the revival of the Ku Klux Klan, so too are we watching something here with this new movie called Civil War, which, what can I say? Maybe the deep state, they see that things are going south, that we're not going to uh, long remain united, that things are going to get bad, and they kind of want to get ahead of it. Who knows? Or it could just be just popular fiction, which is what the birth of a nation was. Okay. Anyway, so we are in being subjected to predictive programming, a psyop, and that's all I want to say about that. The last thing I want to say is that the Germans are rising, and God bless them. I mean, first there was the French with their yellow vests, then there was the Dutch with their tractors, and now the Germans in Germany are creating havoc. And unfortunately, the people who run the EU are not going to listen. Therefore, we can expect to see not many good things down the road. Like I said, there's way more I wanted to talk about, but I felt like I had to lead off with the death of Gonzalo Lira. Please say a prayer for this brave man. Pax Vobiscum, let's try to love one another.